you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere. On the 18th of April in 75, hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day in year. He said to his friend, if the British march by land or sea tonight, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch of the old North Church Tower as a signal light. One if by land and two if by sea, and I on the opposite shores shall be, ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm. William Wagner here. Thanks for tuning in today. Except today, in 2015, taking my hat off for all you people that tuned in to Take Back America. Right there, you see it right in the corner there, right where my head is. There it is. Today, we wouldn't need to ride horses. What we would need is electric cars, because they could shut off the pumps at all the gas stations everywhere, and you wouldn't be able to get gas to spread the message to every Middlesex village and farm. But even better is right here on public access, or what I like to call We the People channel, which they're trying so desperately to phase out across America. There used to be 500 cities in America. I'm just talking like 12, 13 years ago. 500 cities had channels where you, the average citizen who had an attitude, a point of view, and something to say, could get on your local television, whether you're in Atlanta, Georgia, or Milwaukee, Wisconsin, or Tallahassee, Florida, and you could speak your opinion. Today, that 500 stations have been whittled down to about 120 to 140. And decreasing every year. Here in Santa Maria, the city, under its new starved for money leadership, has decided to charge $65 an hour if you want to use the studio to produce. But they still leave it open for public access about 9-10 hours a week. If they're not closed on Wednesday to do some other special thing, they're supposed to be open 4 hours. If they're not closed to do some other special thing on Thursday, they're supposed to be open for 4 hours. And on Friday, tonight, like it is today, the 16th of October, at least that's when we're doing the show live. You may be watching it in December, and it will be an old show by then, but that's when it'll repeat again. They're only open 3 hours. So add that up, we've gone in January from 40 hours a week open for you, the public, you, the educational public, or you, the government access people, could come in and use the studio. And they've killed the studio down now to just 11 hours a week. And you're supposed to be able to fit, 10, 15 people in doing the recorded shows. And they have to do at least one a month to stay on the air. How do you do that if everybody's got to crowd into 9 hours? And it takes generally an hour to set up, get ready, and hour, maybe 2 or 3 to shoot. And then if you don't do it live like I do, you've got to edit. Is Santa Maria trying to kill the P part of PEG, Public, Educational, and Government? It's called PEG. And there's federal laws that I think the city of Santa Maria is now violating. Now, I don't blame them for trying to raise money, but you remember when we had a big surplus, and about 15 years ago, it was run by Comcast. But, 9, 10 years ago, the city demanded that Comcast turn it over. And Comcast said, no problem. We don't want to deal with Mr. Wagner. And that was actually a good thing, I thought. Because that left not just Mr. Wagner, But a lot of people, like Mandy Mestich, does all about guitar. And there's a gal from one of the stands. She does a show about her culture. And there's a lot of preachers come in and do their shows. And that's all public access. People with a point of view that they want to communicate a message that they cannot find or get on the corporate false media, I call them, because you don't really have any media with ABC, CBS. Everything you get is homogenized and pasteurized. Take out anything that's against the New World Order agenda, then you can get it on TV. But if you're like me and you're like in the face of the New World Order agenda, the New World Order agenda, I hope most of you watching tonight know what I'm talking about, you can't hardly get a word on. That's why Ron Paul, back in 2008 and 2012, when he ran for president, Congressman, baby doctor Ron Paul. I mean, we need more real doctors in Congress. What have we got? Piles and hemorrhoid piles of lawyers. And I'm not sure if there's a difference between lawyers and hemorrhoids. They're both a pain in the ass. Just ask anybody. I mean, just look at the surveys they do of, how do you esteem doctors, lawyers, preachers, teachers, so on and so on. Preachers are usually near the top of the esteem charts. Lawyers are below the bottom. They usually take a negative curve. And there's a reason for that. And we're going to get into that tonight. But there's a book I need to tell you about. Here's the book. It's called Death of the Justice System. Death of the Justice System. Let's see that cover. Bring that up. Death of the Justice System. This is written by a woman named Linda Acor, who's now deceased, fairly recently deceased. But before she died, Linda Acor, who authored this book, got it into print from crownoakpress.com. And you can go to crownoakpress.com and get your own copy for, I don't know, 20, 25 bucks or something. I just bought my copy and I don't even remember what I paid. But this goes into the corruption of Chicago politics. But it isn't just Chicago. It's everywhere. On the back of the book, you're looking at the back of the book. Let me read it to you if you can. It says, no tapes equal no justice. Bring that up again, the back of the cover. You just had it there, Stephen. I'm going to read it to you. Judge Brian Barnett Duff, 7th Circuit Federal District Court. Duff talking about the audio tapes, quote, if you could get them, then everybody in the world could get them. And we would be playing them every night on Channel 7, Channel 5, Channel 2, and Channel 9, and Channel 6, and Channel 32, whenever they wanted, unquote. Below that, it cites a case, DOJS, 2nd edition, page 199, Warchak versus City of Chicago, number 84C9978, transcript of 23 July 1992, page 3, line 2225. That's where he gets that quote. This came out of a lawsuit against the City of Chicago where Eugene Warchak was fired because he gave donations to a certain Democrat. I forget whether he supported Daley or Washington or Jane Byrne. And it was the wrong one because one of the other guys got elected. And that put him on a hit list to be fired. Now, this wasn't Democrat against Republican. This was Democrat against Democrat. And there really isn't any difference anyway. I mean, you got Republic rats and you got Democrats. They're all part of the rat family of politicians. That's a joke. You're supposed to laugh with me. Better. That's better. A little more laughter. Anyway, Judge Richard Poizner, going on, 7th Circuit Federal District Court of Appeals, said, quote, the question presented by the present case, a question on which we cannot find any case law, is whether, or more precisely, when audio tapes of a judicial proceeding should be deemed judicial records within the meaning of the access rule, unquote. A transcript was made from the tape, but the transcript is not the original. The tape is. He has a right of access, unquote. We do not think that these should be deemed judicial records unless some reason is shown to distrust the accuracy of the stenographic transcript, unquote. Smith versus U.S. District Court Officers, numbers 98-1423 in the year 2000. That's found in 203 F 3rd 440. Okay, so what are they saying? What they're saying is one judge said, no, the master tapes, we don't want the people to know about it. They'd be playing them on Channel 22, Channel 7 every night, whenever they wanted to, embarrassing the crap out of the crooked judges and the crooked clerks and, most of all, the crooked attorneys. Now, what would be wrong with that? I think that's just the kind of curative information we need to see on corporate media. But they, meaning the Bar Association, member lawyers, don't want you to hear the master tapes. They don't want you to even know there is a master tape. But since for a long, long time, I think more than 50 years, every courtroom has a master tape the minute court starts. The minute it starts, as the judge is walking in there and they're saying, all rise or all remain seated and come to order. You know the reason you used to say all rise and remove your hats is back in the really, really old days, some people would hide a gun underneath them. They'd come in and sit with a loaded gun because they were going to shoot somebody, one of the lawyers or maybe the judge or some witness. And so by making everybody stand up, the bailiff sitting in the back got a chance to see if anybody's sitting on a weapon. The reason they had to take out your hats, and they will say, take off your hat when you go into court, because they want to make sure you didn't have a gun strapped inside the hat, or a knife, or a dagger, or something you could do evil in the courtroom. Those were common sense practices. But now what they do is they have these fancy machines that x-ray you, send radio waves through your body, damaging your cells every time you go in and out. And some courtrooms, they have one line for lawyers and a different line for non-lawyers. I was talking to one of the people in the security, says, well, in our courthouse, the presiding judge told us to turn the machine off because certain female lawyers don't want to be x-rayed. So when you get in the lawyer line, you aren't x-rayed at all. They make it look like they're being x-rayed, but they're not being checked at all. If you go in the non-lawyer line, you're getting the full dosage. So we have right from the beginning. Now, of course, I wanted him to go on tape and say this, and of course, this person, I'm not saying it's a he or a she, did not want to go on tape because they don't want to lose their minimum wage job running the security operation. I mean, they don't make enough to live on anyway, and it takes two of them and their spouse to make a living, right from the get-go. And you know, I was up watching Amy Duran's case, which you can see the full thing, the show I did on that. It's on my YouTube channel. And while I'm sitting there, they have these signs as you go into down the court, the federal courthouse in Fresno. I checked, it was on every floor, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, 6th, 7th floor. They all had these signs. No recording devices, cell phones allowed, turned on in the courtroom, except for lawyers. So lawyers are a special privileged class, and the rest of us are cattle going in to be slaughtered. And that's what this book, The Death of the Justice System, brings out. In fact, I'm going to read you a page here, and you know, I didn't write this. This is written by Linda Acor. And on page 82, she writes in this book, The Death of the Justice System, on the second to the last paragraph, she writes, you see, lawyers feel they should get paid to cheat you. It's an entitlement thing. Have any of you ever had a lawyer cheat you and you felt like, wow, yeah, 100% of the audience watching you tonight, their hands went up. You see, lawyers feel they should get paid, it's the top yellow line, to cheat you. It's an entitlement thing. After all, the entire city and the courts make him do it. Not the devil, the city and the courts. Don't blame the devil for this. You know the bullshit. There by the grace of God go I. I'd accept it better that the devil made me do it. Next paragraph. Dig this. Out of 100,000 employed lawsuits, none of them made it through the summary judgment until Warchek filed his lawsuit. Judge Decker, who was ready to retire at the time, allowed Warchek to go on to trial and let him win his summary judgment. You see, when you file a lawsuit, right away the other side asks for a summary judgment of dismissal. And you've got to oppose that. But if the fix is in, which it is in most cases, anytime you're going against the government, you're going against Child Protective Services, you're going against crooked judges, crooked lawyers, a crooked law firm that is retained by a county, city, or state, the fix is in. But what they give you as transcript is not usually the actual transcript. So when you go to appeal it, and sometimes all they have to do is change one little word in that transcript that you wouldn't remember because you're under great stress and you're watching your case go up and you're blathering like you got ADD at the judge. Oh, judge, this ain't fair, and blah, 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 blah. And off goes your mouth. And all this is being recorded on a master tape. They never tell you. They say, well, you'll have to order the transcripts. The transcript will cost you $150, $250, whatever. You know, if it's a long trial, like the Jackson trial that went on for 5 months, that transcript in writing could cost you tens of thousands of dollars. But what they don't tell you is there is a master audio tape, and you can buy that for about $5, $11, $15. And all they do is run off a copy from the master copy audio tape, which under law and rules of the U.S. Supreme Court, and it affects state courts too, they are never allowed to take the master tape out of the courthouse. Never, ever, ever. They can make copies of it, and they frequently do, for the court reporter, so she can check her transcript against that. And if she made a mistake, she can correct her mistake. But usually what happens? Somebody diddles with the transcript and changes it. So when you go on appeal, you automatically lose anyway. Thank you very much for the 15 grand or the 30 grand to appeal your case. You lost, I'm sorry. We can appeal it to the U.S. Supreme Court. Won't make any difference unless you get the master tape. And what I'm telling you tonight is something no lawyer will tell you. They won't even admit to it. The clerk won't admit to it. You have to go to the proper clerk in the courthouse and say, here's my cash money. I want the master tape from today or from last June 28th, whatever it was, in such and such a case, at such, I want the master tape. Here's my money, I'm ready to pay. Some clerks will give it to you. Most of them will say, well, I got to check with the judge, or I got to check with the presiding judge, or I got to check with the senior clerk, my boss way in the back, you know, because they're trying to figure out how to tell you there is no master tape. Yes, there is. They just don't want you to get it. And that's what this book is about. And I spent a lot of time trying to understand what he was talking about, the Shackman ruling out of Chicago. Turns out they have this law, and the case actually never even happened, called the Shackman case. But they say, oh, you can sue the city under the Shackman case and you're going to win. 100,000, according to what he wrote here, right here, page 83. Not one winning case in over 100,000 cases. Not one. How can that be? How can you have 100,000 cases and every fired employee lost? Well, Chicago is known to be one of the most corrupt cities. I'm sure LA and New York have rivaled it. But in Chicago, it's politics the old-fashioned way, the way the civil service was in most cities and states was supposed to do away with. But somehow Chicago retained their ability to fire all their employees so the new ingoing mayor can hire the guys that help them win the office. I mean, this is old-time politics, going back to the Revolutionary War. But when you go way back to the 1810s and the 1790s, a lot of people served, including congressmen, served without being paid. But what he makes out here is that when Obama took office, even before Obama, Chicago so dominated the White House that the Chicagoans referred to the White House as the 51st Ward, Chicago style. It's in this book, people. And Eugene Warchek, who is going to come out and do an interview with me one day soon, you won't want to miss it. You really won't want to miss it. We're going to go into everything that's in this book in one show, plus some things that are not in this book yet. You'll have to write another book. He'll have to write the book. He names the names. He names the judges. But the key point of all this is that every case, probably as far back as when I was born, well, maybe not that far back. The dinosaurs didn't allow tape recorders in the courthouses back then. But my point is, the system is corrupt. It's designed to be corrupt by the Bar Association. Who is the Bar Association? The Bar Association is nothing but a corporate club. The Boy Scouts are a corporate club. The Girl Scouts are a corporate club. The Moose Lodge is incorporated. The Elks Club is incorporated. The KKK in many states is incorporated. Not as the Ku Klux Klan, but they have other fancy names. Knights of the White Order or something. You know, all these things are incorporated, but they're all private. So why should a private club be running our courts? They have so corrupted the system that they now have got laws passed where you cannot even run for judge unless you've been a member of the bar. Now, what if we changed that law and said, you cannot run for judge unless you've been a member of William Wagner's TV production crew for 10 years? You'd say, what? This is crazy. What, is that any crazier than saying you cannot run for judge unless you've been a member of the Elks Club for 10 years? Unless you've been a member of the Boy Scouts for 10 years? Or Girl Scouts or Moose Lodge? Or the Bar Association, which is nothing more than a private club of an international union of criminals, in my First Amendment opinion, while we still have a First Amendment, which, you know, we're struggling under Bush and Obama to maintain that privilege. And if that isn't bad enough, when nobody runs against a crooked attorney who's holding a state legislative seat, and someone does, they just steal the election. When they protest too much, they kill them or their son. I give you, flipping back here, Tamara Clark in an interview I didn't do. Watch a little bit of this. She won the election. I think it was the 2nd District of Las Vegas, and then it was stolen from her right during the election night. She was winning. 2-1, hands down, winning. Woke up the next morning losing 2-1. Roll tape, please.
Never have gotten before.
What could be amazing, and what we're talking about historically, is the fact that the Senate could possibly be divided, 10 Republicans, 10 Democrats, and if you win, you're going to hold an awful lot of power.
Responsibility, I think, is a better way to put it. But I will be in a position where we will help make key decisions as to who chairs committees and that type of situation, and who it is that is the majority leader in the Senate. And I think that, yeah, that is a strong responsibility, but I think it's well placed in a third-party candidate that doesn't have any vested interest with party line. I'm not answering to any party. I'm answering to my constituents only.
When you look at some of the issues, though, if you did run into a situation like that, and people must be asking you this, who would come out better, the Democrats or Republicans?
On the spending issues, and for me, fiscal issues are very important this year in the legislature. On fiscal issues, I would much rather place a Republican in the leadership than I would a Democrat for fiscal reasons.
Now, you've worked very hard on trying to repeal the business tax. If you go to Carson City, what are you going to do? What's the first thing you're going to do as far as the business tax?
Make sure that we put people in place in committees so that we can get this business tax repealed.
Okay.
Make sure we put the proper people in place to do that.
What would you like to see as far as the tax goes?
I don't think that we need to replace it with any tax. I think it needs to go. I think the business tax has to leave. The damage that it's caused this year has been astounding. We've cost Nevada jobs. We've created businesses not being able to expand. And what we have done is brought out-of-state workers and out-of-state companies into this state, taking Nevada jobs and taking money out of Nevada at a time when we're in economic crunch. It wasn't the thing to do.
A lot of people are saying that we're getting a lot of people coming into the state here. A lot of people want to live here. They want to share the dream that we have here and the prosperity. Yet at the same time, too, they're overburdening our social welfare system. How do we remedy that? Do you just do massive cuts?
I think that not only massive cuts, but we have to look to reform the system, possibly looking at time limits that you can be on the system, start putting a cap, after a period of time you're not on it, possibly looking at not paying for more and more children. Right now it's a reward to have more children on the welfare system, and looking at possibly not making it such an easy system to be on today, and looking into programs that encourage businesses to train and to hire these people, and training programs that will actually train people to work in a job such as a trade skill, and can put them working today, and will also encourage business owners by doing this. They will...
That was Tamara Clark. Back about 20-some, 22, 23 years ago, she ran for and did win, and then was cheated out of her state Senate seat in the crooked state of Nevada, which I think, in my humble opinion, is just a smidgen more crooked and more run by the mafia than California. That's just my opinion, but I could be wrong. Maybe the mafia's got a stronger hold in California, and I'm just not aware of it. There's a man I interviewed a long time ago. We're not going to show him. His name was Irwin Schiff. I did 3 different interviews, and I had to go to Las Vegas, which I would never go there anymore. I wouldn't go to any part of Nevada. The state is too crooked, too corrupt, and your life is, your life is not your own if you go there. You might as well jump into a pool of sharks and hope that they don't eat you up in the first 30 seconds. Irwin Schiff is sitting in prison for doing nothing more than writing a book. Just like Linda Aker did. They can't put Linda in prison. They have to dig up her body because she died. But the book is out from crownoakpress.com. And it's less than $30. It's worth every penny. It's not like your ordinary books because it's got transcripts. Shows you how they doctored. The transcript shows the first transcript and then the doctored one. And, he underlines things to bring your attention to, federal court transcripts. He goes into a lot of detail to prove his point. Anyway, they can't kill Linda because she's already dead. They can't put her in prison because she's already dead. But Irwin Schiff, someone should send letters to Obama saying, on your last hour, when you let all your personal friends who are crooks out of prison, cut a pardon for Irwin Schiff. He didn't kill anybody. He didn't stab anybody. He didn't steal anybody's money. He didn't hurt anybody. All he did was publish a book called The Federal Mafia, which is the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, which is the impoverishment arm of the Federal Reserve Bank that keeps you impoverished while they roll in money and then charge you interest on the money they create out of thin air. And we all know that John Fitzgerald Kennedy was killed specifically because he was issuing debt-free $2 and $5 bills and ordered silver dollars to be minted again. Now, what do I mean by debt-free? That means the gangster banksters, known as Rockefeller, Rothschild, Chase, Morgan, so on, Guggenheim, I can't remember all the list. I have a video where I scroll them through the video on YouTube. But the bank gangsters that run the Federal Reserve, which is a private corporation that issues your money, not the U.S. Treasury, these guys hated Kennedy with a passion because he was going to end the Vietnam War once he got rid of that crook LBJ from his ticket and got reelected in '64. LBJ got word of that and made sure he was killed. Hoover was in on it, head of the CIA was in on it, a low-level CIA agent named George Herbert Walker Bush was in on it, and he's still alive. He should be, in Wagner's opinion, arrested immediately and held without bail because he was part of the conspiracy to kill Kennedy. Now, I'm not saying Kennedy was a saint, that Kennedy never did anything wrong. I will admit that all the evidence that I've seen is Kennedy had at least 25 or 30 women he was banging while he was in the White House. But so what? You think LBJ didn't? You think his predecessor, Eisenhower, didn't have a girlfriend? Turns out we all thought Eisenhower was squeaky clean. We find out his beautiful blonde Jeep driver, when he was a general, commanding general in charge of all forces during World War II, he was banging her every night. Yeah, all this has come out, but of course Republicans don't want to talk about that. Shh, Mr. Wagner, I hate it when you talk bad about Wagner. Republicans, Mr. Wagner, don't say bad things about Republicans. Only say bad things about Democrats. I don't care whether you're a Democrat or you're a Republican rat. Either kind is a rat. They're part of the political rat family, okay? I don't care. It's the same thing. Remember Governor Conley who got shot in the back or shoulder something when Kennedy got it right in the head? Conley changed from being a Democrat to being a Republican. And everybody still loved him. They changed colors like dirty underwear. Oh, the Republican underwear is too dirty. I think I'll put on the Democrat underwear. It looks cleaner. No, it isn't cleaner. It's the same old SHI something. I'm sorry, it's my PTSD acting up. My post-traumatic stress syndrome. We, the people, are not all suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome, but more and more of us are, only it comes from legal abuse in the rotten court system. Now, why am I knocking lawyers? I've spent the first half hour of my show basically telling you how rotten lawyers, not just the lawyer that Tamara Clark defeated in the election and then stole it back to the state senate of Nevada. But why is Obama such a pissant poor lawyer? Why did he never actually earn a paycheck as a lawyer? In fact, I can't find a single job that he was ever hired for to do until he ran for a state senator of Illinois and got the incumbent disqualified from the ballot. Because if you know Cook County politics, nobody goes out and asks people to sign their nomination papers. One guy in the ward sits down, takes a voter list, says, okay, I'm signing Joe Smith, I'm signing Jane Smith, I'm signing Jones, I'm signing blah, blah, blah. And they just forge all the nomination signatures. And they all know it. It's not like this is some big, shocking surprise. In California here, at least when I used to put candidates, I was a little more honest. I would actually go knock on people's door, wait for them to come, explain I've got a candidate, I want to get on the ballot, would you please sign? It takes days, especially if you got to get thousands of them. But that's just me. And we're in California, remember. In Chicago, they do it the Chicago way, okay? The boss says it's going to be like this, we're going to do it like this. So Obama runs, he blows the whistle on an incumbent that he's running against. The incumbent's taken off the ballot. Obama wins. Hands up or hands down, he wins because he's the only choice on the ballot. And then from there, they run him for U.S. Senate, and I started scratching my hands and wait a minute. Here's a guy, never held a job, never ran a company, never was in charge of a union, and all of a sudden he's a state senator, now he's running for U.S. Senator. He hasn't even finished his state Senate term, and he's already running for U.S. Senator. He wins the U.S. Senate because more powerful Democrats were told to stand down and get out of the way. We're going to put Obama in. See? It's the way it's going to be. The boss says so. This is Chicago politics, people. Chicago pretty much decides what Illinois is going to do. So Obama gets to the U.S. Senate. He doesn't even finish his 6 years in the U.S. Senate. He's running for president. I said, oh my God, this is such a setup. We are so lied to. And this is, you know, in the same time, what's this guy's name from Illinois? He goes to prison. Another guy from Ohio is going to prison. Both of them are Democrats, I think, or Republic rats. One of the other kind of rats, I'm not sure. It doesn't matter. They're politicians. How do you know when a politician is lying? His lips are moving. What do you call a boat with 500 lawyers that sinks in the middle of the ocean? A good start. Ha, ha, ha. Now, why am I down on lawyers? Because like Linda said in the book, they feel entitlement to cheat you, to tell you, oh, you poor dear, did they do this and that to you? Oh, well, you just give me a retainer fee of $10,000 or $20,000, and I'm going to hammer them. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to tell the judge I'm going to file that, and we're going to stick it to him. And he takes your money, puts it in the bank, buys a new BMW, and he says, oh, I'm so sorry we lost. I didn't get that filed in time. I'm so sorry. I missed the deadline. I was so busy taking checks from other suckers and putting their checks in my bank account. And then sometimes they'll do, which I can document in several cases, they go under the table and actually agree with the other attorney how far to milk each client, how much money they can, because you two are busy doing this. And what does the Bible tell you? Come quickly to agreement with your adversary, lest they hand you over to the judge gives you to the bailiff, and they lock you up. Just come to some agreement. You hate the guy, he hates you, you had a disagreement. Settle it outside of the crooked courts. In fact, the courts have been crooked for so long, the small claims courts developed privately, simply because they knew you couldn't afford an attorney, he was going to lie and cheat you. So someone ought to write a book, maybe someone did, I'll have to research that, on small claims courts. They developed completely outside our crooked justice system. And then one day the judges scratched their head and said, you know what, we're losing cases to small claims. These people are going over to small claims and getting the things settled in a day or two, and the lawyers aren't making any money. So they said, we're going to incorporate small claims and say you can only bring a small claim case if it's, I think originally it was under $1,000. As the money lost value, it was under $5,000. Now I think it's, you got to be under $10,000 or $15,000. Well, $10,000 or $15,000 used to be enough to buy a house, you know, back in the day. So now the crooked system is sucked in the small claim system, made it part of their official crooked bar-dominated system, and they make sure a bar-approved person sits on small claims. Still, you're better off in most cases if it's to go into that system. If you're not up against a government entity, you know, the evil empire like CPS or one of the other gargantuan things like the Tennessee Valley Authority or the authorities that are trying to shut off the water. You know, I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the lawyer that's responsible for trying to shut the water off to the San Joaquin Valley. And I was on my way going to Fresno and back. I kept seeing these signs. I got to mention this. Water means jobs. You'd see these big signs. Turn on the water. No water, no food. Well, duh. You need water to grow food. Who's trying to shut off the water? And why does, you know, your ABC, CBS, NBC, your local affiliates here on the Central Coast don't touch this? They don't touch this at all. Their water's being choked off in the San Joaquin Valley for really stupid reasons. And I mean really stupid with a capital S. That doesn't stand for Superman. It stands for stupid. They're trying to shut these off. Getting to my point, we wouldn't have lawyers if we'd stuck to the original first 13 amendments. And there's an amendment called the 13th Amendment that you're familiar with, the Anti-Slavery, Anti-Involuntary Servitude Amendment, passed around 1865-66, after Lincoln illegally made it an executive order. Then Congress made it legal by passing the second 13th Amendment. You're saying, well, what do you mean the second 13th Amendment? Well, because there was already a first original 13th Amendment ratified by 1818. And it was the principal cause, never mentioned in American history books since the National Teachers Association got control of the education. It's not mentioned. But I came across an education book from 1823. And in that education book, it goes into the story of the original 13th Amendment. Unfortunately, it's so fragile because it was printed on acid bleach paper. If you turn the pages with your hands, it crumbles. But in that book, it goes into the history of passing the original 13th Amendment. And what they're telling you is the War of 1812 was to silence that 18th Amendment. And when they failed, they thought they succeeded. The British thought. That's why the war ended. Once they burned the printing office in Washington, D.C., they thought they'd won. Aha! But they didn't realize is that we weren't one big nation with all our archives in the national D.C., District of Columbia. We were many states, and each state was an independent nation, a sovereign entity unto itself, and they kept their own state archives. And we can prove to you, I'm going to show you, run the tape, proof of the original 13th Amendment. Here, just recently certified for yours truly. There's the gold stamp. And I have this in my possession. And this guy is the archivist who, and he gives his oath there, and he's swearing that this is true and correct, the original copy of the 13th Amendment. And you can see
really
this
law
13th
in the
Amendment.
United
Listen up.
States. State of New Hampshire. I, Brian Nelson Buford, State Archivist for the State of New Hampshire, having been duly authorized by the Secretary of State William G. Gardner to authenticate copies of records and papers kept by the Department of State, do hereby certify that the following and heretofore attached, consisting of 3 pages, are true copies of the original document on file at the Division of Archives and Records Management. Here is, this is not a copy, this is an original certificate here. This is the gold seal of the state of New Hampshire. Behind it we have the record from the Journal of the House of Representatives for the state of New Hampshire, dated here December 9th, 1812, 200 years ago. And it reads here very easily, Journal of the House. The committee appointed to take into consideration certain laws and resolutions passed by the legislatures of Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and Vermont, and other documents accompanying the same report, etc. The resolves exhibited here, the resolves exhibited, and they further reported that it is, in their opinion, noticed expedient to adopt or approve the other proposed amendments to the Constitution of the United States, which report was accepted, whereas His Excellency the Governor of this state has whereas the Excellency the Governor of this state has laid before the General Court a resolution passed by the Congress of the United States in the words following, to wit, resolved by the Senate and the House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled, 2/3 of both houses occurring and here again you see the date, December 9th, 1812. In the November session, the houses occurring that following the section be submitted to the legislatures of the several states, which, when ratified by the legislatures of the 3/4 of the states, shall be valid and binding as part of the Constitution of the United States. If any citizen of the United States shall accept, claim, receive, or retain any title of nobility or honor, or shall, without the consent of Congress, accept and retain any present, pension, office, or emolument of any kind whatever from any emperor, king, prince, or foreign power, such person shall cease to be a citizen of the United States and shall be incapable of holding any office of the trust of the incapable of holding any office of the trust or profits under them or either of them. Therefore, resolved by the Senate and the House of Representatives in General Court convened that the foregoing amendment proposed by Congress to the Constitution of the United States be, and the same is hereby, on the part of this state, agreed to, ratified, and confirmed, and be it further resolved that His Excellency the Governor be requested to transmit copies of the foregoing resolution to the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives in the United States, and to each of our senators and representatives in Congress, and to each of the governors of the several states. Voted that Messrs. Pate, J. Shepard, and Dami, with such as the Senate, might be joined in a committee to consider the petition of David Atwood and others praying for a 3-cent tax on each, and et cetera, et cetera. And then it goes on to another thing. But on the back of these, we have the statement in red ink. I do hereby certify the copy of this sheet and the copy of the original document and file at the Division of Archives and Records Management, State of New Hampshire, January 12th, and it's signed here by Brian Nelson Buford. Same thing on the other copy of these pages. And this, ladies and gentlemen, this, what we have before us here, this is
Well, there you saw it. The original proof, certified proof from the state of New Hampshire. Now, we also have a copy from the state of Virginia, which in 1818 finished the ratification process. By then, they had sufficient states, and the original 13th Amendment was ratified by Virginia, and that completed the process. However, if some crooked lawyer, and very few of mine crooked, I can name them on one hand, Tom Mesereau, Susan Yu, Gary Zerman, Michael Minns in Houston, and Maybe there's a guy I know in New York, but I'm not sure. I haven't watched him enough. All the rest of the attorneys, as far as I'm concerned, are crooks, including the ones that become judges and sit on the bench and put on black robes. They're all criminals. All these judges are criminals. Even the judges I like are criminals. Because as you read, if you set yourself up as a special honor, one of these judges, honorable judge this, honorable judge so-and-so. You know what, schmuck? I call him Judge Schmuck. There's nothing honorable about you. Honor has to be earned. Honor has to be demonstrated. Honor isn't just given to you because your bar-carded buddies recommended you to the ex-Governor Schwarzenegger, the molestulator. How would you pronounce it? The molestiator. The butt-grabbing Governor Schwarzenegger, who's now back in the movies. I mean, he's not anywhere near close. I know Reagan was a womanizer too, but Reagan had some decency, and I'm not sure there's a decent bone in that Austrian flabby muscles gone to flab body of Schwarzenegger. In fact, I could probably take Schwarzenegger on at this age. That's not an invitation, Arnold. That's not an invitation. Just want to be clear. But if push came to punch, who knows? Anyway, my point is, since this original 13th Amendment, that said if anybody claims an honor, and what does BAR stand for? Did any lawyer ever tell you what does the BAR stand for? Are they talking about that bar that they separate the gallery from the court process? No. If that was the bar in bar association, that would mean all the lawyers should sit on that bar. No, they don't sit on the bar. They go past the bar. Technically, if you're in the gallery of a courtroom, the judge has no authority over you. But some judges, when they want you, will say, oh, Mrs. Smith or Miss Ashley, come up here, come before the bar. Now, once you cross that bar, the little swinging wooden half gate there, and you step in front, then you've stepped into their kangaroo court system. Then you've given them jurisdiction just by acquiescing. As long as you stay back in the gallery, they don't really have jurisdiction, what they call legal jurisdiction over you. There's so much to this, I don't want to discuss it. I want to bring an expert in who will tell you about your all cap name and your upper and lowercase name. All this is not straw man nonsense. All this actually has a basis in the process of which they deprive you of all your rights. But if the original 13th Amendment was enforced, that means they lose their citizenship as soon as they join the bar. So every judge for the last 50, 60, 80 years, as soon as they joined the bar, and going back to 1818, as soon as they joined, in fact, Abraham Lincoln could not have been elected a U.S. Senator or a Congressman or the President, because as soon as he would have joined a bar, he would have lost his citizenship. You don't see it much anymore. Maybe in some old established law firms back east, they still say, you know, attorney so-and-so, and after their name they put a comma, Esquire, E-S-Q, which means Esquire. And Esquire is actually the lowest rank of nobility. The Esquire was the guy that held the knight's horse's reins. He would hold the reins to the horse for the knight while the knight mounted. That was a squire or an esquire. And they were considered nobility because they helped the knight who went off to fight the battles. They were the lowest of the lowest of them. They usually couldn't read or write. Lawyers can usually read and write. In fact, they used to get paid by the word. The old-time lawyers. Now they just say, give me 10, 20,000 retainer. But in the old days, they'd say, well, I've written your will, Miss Jones, and I count 10,000 words. At a penny a word, you owe me such and such amount of money. And they would literally count the words. And some of the real old English, they would have a little number notation on the side of the page as they turned the will, because that was the number of words per page. And then they just add up those numbers. You owe me so much money, whether it was a farthing per word or a half farthing or a half penny, you would have to pay them. And a penny used to be a lot of money. In the old days, you could buy, in England, you could buy 2 or 3 loaves of bread for a half penny, an English half penny. Even in America 100 years ago, for 1 US cent, you could buy 2 loaves of whole wheat bread with no GMOs. They didn't even have GMOs 100 years ago. A point being, lawyers are not U.S. citizens. Therefore, they cannot be elected judges. They cannot be prosecutors. They cannot be your public defender pretender. They can't be the clerk. There are clerks who are also lawyers. Some lawyers couldn't get a good job, so they start clerking for a judge. And then they learn how corrupt the system. They learn who shifts things and who makes the power, and they get to be friends with the power movers and shakers. And then they come out and run for judge and get themselves appointed. So, with all that, I think I want to tell you about John Fitzgerald Kennedy murdered, but I wanted you to hear this because I didn't put this together, and you will not hear this. And then we're going to go to Fathers Without Rights, an unbelievable story that I produced a documentary 10 years ago. But first, I want you to see this thing from Kennedy. Here we go. Roll it.
What your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Do not
They are the words that arguably, more than any others, epitomize the public image of John F. Kennedy. Words that inspired millions, including a 15-year-old Bill Clinton. But later on that same historic day, in less public circumstances, Kennedy uttered another remark, words that revealed Jack Kennedy, the man.
He went to a private party at Joe Alsop's house, Joe Alsop, the columnist. And when Kennedy walked through the doorway, the first words that came out of his mouth were, "Where are the broads?"
Like Bill Clinton, Jack Kennedy had a reputation for being a ladies' man long before entering the White House. It seemed to be a family tradition.
He had grown up in a household where obviously his father had mistresses, where many people had mistresses. I don't think he thought, by the way, that there was anything wrong with all of that.
As a handsome young congressman and later senator, he made frequent visits to Hollywood, where his non-stop womanizing became the talk of the town.
And you know who he was dating in those days? Zsa Zsa Gabor. He had a big affair with Zsa Zsa, and but George Sanders ended it. George Sanders told Zsa Zsa that congressmen are commoners. He says that's why they call it the House of Commons in England. He says, whereas I, George Sanders, am a star. So Zsa Zsa went with George Sanders and married him and dropped JFK.
Marrying Jacqueline Bouvier in 1953 didn't change Kennedy's roving ways. Neither did becoming president. He felt he could have any woman in the world, and he propositioned them in a way that would have earned a slap in the face for anyone else.
In general, he walked up to them and asked them. There didn't seem to be any great subtlety in it. He was, as they say, no gentleman.
Kennedy's alleged conquests read like a who's who of the average man's fantasies in the 50s and 60s. He reportedly had affairs with Kim Novak, Angie Dickinson, Jane Mansfield, and the sex symbol of them all, Marilyn Monroe.
I personally have always thought Marilyn was in love with JFK, and would have, you know, if she had the chance, would have married him. Of course, JFK was not about to divorce Jackie.
Longtime Hollywood correspondent James Bacon knew Marilyn as well as anybody, and he says she revealed to him the most intimate details of her relationship with Kennedy.
Well, Marilyn Monroe always complained that JFK was too hurried up in his lovemaking, that he slammed bam, thank you, ma'am, you know. And as I told her, I said, Marilyn, the guy's running the country. He hasn't got time for foreplay.
Fidel Castro whips up a furor in Cuba.
But whether he was dealing with the Cold War or Congress, John F. Kennedy always found time for sex. He even talked about his insatiable needs with fellow world leaders like Britain's Harold Macmillan.
Kennedy said, I don't know about you, Harold, but I get these crashing headaches if I don't have a woman every couple of days.
And yet it appears there were members of the White House staff who prevented that problem.
There were two secretaries, or perhaps presidential aides would have been a better term, that were nicknamed Fiddle and Faddle. And it's likely that they were doing something other than taking dictation for Jack Kennedy.
I got the feeling that something was a little wrong because their appearance was a little disheveled in the lobby, and that turned out, as I learned later, because they were engaging in nude swimming parties in the White House swimming pool in the middle of the working day.
In the most hallowed home in America, it appeared that Kennedy had created his own version of Hugh Hefner's Playboy Mansion. And the center of it all was the swimming pool, the place where Kennedy and selected women could frolic undisturbed and unclothed, with the Secret Service keeping it all secret.
He enjoyed a great deal of privacy in the swimming pool. Each agent that I knew was strictly instructed that if he was in the pool with company, no one entered the pool. Absolutely no one.
There was, however, a time when one of Kennedy's pool parties was almost interrupted, and by the last person the president wanted to see.
All of a sudden, my boss comes flying down and goes in the door and says something that Mrs. Kennedy has been on her way in. So he charges in there and leaves, and all of a sudden we see the doors open and people are scattering and with robes on and leaving the pool. And the president happens to come. I was in the little airway there, and the president comes at me holding a Bloody Mary. And he looks around and he hands it to me. He says, "Take care of this."
But Jacqueline Kennedy was more than aware of her husband's escapades.
One time she discovered a pair of women's panties in her pillowcase. She brought them to Jack, kind of dangling them between her, her index finger and her thumb, saying, "Could you please find the owner of these? They're not my size."
Kennedy's sexual recklessness continued in and out of the White House, and his promiscuity while on the road filled Secret Service agents like Tony Sherman with fear.
Known prostitutes were brought in by members of the police department assisting us into the president's suite. Well, you get kind of paranoid. Did they have a knife with them? Did they have some kind of poison with them? Did they have some venereal disease that could be used later politically against him?
But Kennedy's most scandalous relationship was with someone with impeccable references. 26-year-old Judith Campbell of Palm Springs and Beverly Hills. Kennedy met her in Vegas in 1960.
Judith Campbell, in those days, and I'm talking like 1960, was a beautiful woman. I mean, she was in Elizabeth Taylor's class. And she was, going around with a lot of different stars in town. She had an affair with Sinatra, and it was Frank who introduced Judith Campbell to JFK, and they hit it off like crazy.
I had lunch with Jack the next day, and then I went home, and he continued calling me, and we met again in a month. He kept trying to arrange a time for us to meet, and we met again in New York. And from that time on, we saw each other for 2.5 years.
The upshot of this is that through a period of time following this, after Kennedy was elected, and even after he was in the White House, he continued to use Judith Exner to not only to have sex with her and tell her he was in love with her and that he might divorce Jackie and all of this stuff.
Around the same time, however, Frank Sinatra also introduced Campbell to Chicago mobster Sam Giancana. That association caused J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI to become aware of her. They quickly learned of Campbell's affair with the president and began harassing her. The surveillance, the questioning never stopped. Campbell turned to the president for help.
His tone was that you haven't done anything wrong. Just don't let it bother you. No one's going to hurt you. You're not in danger. It was a rather cavalier attitude about it.
After 2.5 years, Campbell had enough. She ended the relationship with one last visit to the White House in December of 1962, a visit that had consequences that Campbell kept secret for over 30 years. Finally, in 1996, she revealed to columnist Liz Smith what had happened.
She said she slept with him one last time, and when she got to Chicago, she realized that after a few weeks or months that she was pregnant. So she told him, and he told her if she wanted to keep the baby, he would make all the arrangements. And she said, I can't do that, Jack. You can't have, the President of the United States can't have an illegitimate child. And so he said, well, maybe you could ask Sam if he could help us.
Sam, being mobster Sam Giancana. According to Campbell, Giancana arranged for an abortion to be performed at a Chicago hospital.
And naturally, a very, very frightened and shaken doctor performed this abortion. One who never talked and never would have.
11 months later, John F. Kennedy would be assassinated. A nation mourned as it had never mourned before. But what if America had been aware then of Kennedy's secret life?
He probably had a neurotic obsession with sex that, if it had been known at the time, would have blown him out of the White House.
Yet that kind of expose was not really a possibility in the 1960s.
Unless I'd been under the bed, there's nothing I could write about. You know, I couldn't write about hearsay or gossip.
But many reporters believe that if Kennedy had been elected to a second term, his secret life would have been exposed.
I think it would have. I think eventually it would have come out. I think that the water, this sludge of gossip and scandal and everything was building up against the doors of convention and morality and everything, and finally it all burst open.
Well,
and now
folks,
we're living.
That was John Fitzgerald Kennedy, a side of him that most of you probably weren't too aware of. I know I was a young man when he was assassinated. It was on my 18th birthday. That's why I never forgot. November 22nd, 1963. Ruined my birthday party. Ruined a lot of parties for a lot of Democrats that liked Kennedy. But for certain Democrats and certain Republicans, it was thumbs up, business as usual, push the war machine ahead. That's what that was all about. And you can be sure there was a lawyer named Edward Clark out of Dallas and Houston who got a job as an ambassador because he was the bagman that paid off some of the assassins. Now, what's the point? Lawyers are always involved with the banks in transferring money. That's why they always want, you know, I know this guy, Bill Elwood, he doesn't refer to judges as judges, he's called them bankers. You go into the court and the banker takes your money. That's what they do. They literally take you're fined $200, you're fined $300. This one guy said, $500 couldn't contain my contempt for this court. He says, good, you're fined $5,000 and 3 weeks in jail. Guy said, 3 weeks isn't enough for me to call off. Good, you got 2 months in jail. That really happened. That was a banker. He wasn't a real judge. All these guys are masquerading as we the people, Article 3 judges. They're not. Now, I want to show you a CPS worker and her final solution when, let it roll. Watch this, and then I'll tell you what you just saw. Barbara Fisher. You need to call Barbara Fisher, the CPS worker. You need to call this woman, Barbara Fisher, and say, don't you know all babies lose weight when they're born? Listen to this.
And I thought it was your mother, but maybe it was your mother. Are you videotaping me?
Yes.
So I'm going to stop talking. Your attorney's going to call in about 5 minutes, so I guess I'm going to wait for that.
Okay.
And this will hurt you in court. And I'll be straight. I told you I've been working with the department for 15 years.
Right.
I've worked for child welfare for 18. I'm an experienced court worker.
I believe you, but you know what? Like, they've already taken our child. You know, like, I mean, how do we trust you guys? You know, like, what have you guys done to earn our trust?
Today,
you know?
And I use your attorney. I communicate with both your attorneys, but I'm not here to be videotaped. And I have to tell you, I can tell you the truth that Judge Basha will not like this.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand.
So, I mean, but that's up to you. I'm an experienced worker. I explain a lot of this.
Right.
You know, I sent you an email Monday introducing myself, trying to what my role was. I sent emails to both your attorneys about the need to communicate and build trust, that you had lots of reservations. I acknowledged that. I said it was going to be a simple home visit today.
Right. I mean, can you walk in? Like, what are you assessing? That's what I don't understand. Like, you know,
But
like,
you want your
like
case. You want your case closed. You know, right? You want the court to dismiss the petition.
Well, there should have never been the case in the first place,
Yeah.
but, you know, yeah, whatever, right.
You have documents proving that my child is doing well, right?
Correct, but it goes deeper than that. You have confidentiality issues. You have a neighbor here. I don't have a signed release, so I'm not going to get into the specifics of the allegation. I don't mind reminding you what I kind of talked about yesterday about my role in the home visit. So, she's cute.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you guys. I have to go to work.
Okay,
Bye.
thank
Thank
you. Guys. Have a good one, sir. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
And this was
I
today.
also have to pick up 2 little boys to visit with their mom today. So if Linda doesn't call shortly, I'm kind of limited in how long I can stand out here. And you're videotaping me, and I've asked you not to. I'm not going to agree to that.
Do you have a court order?
Well, I can call I can talk to your husband. He knows I'm coming.
Yes, I can get them for you.
Sure. I mean, one of the things that the court said about returning your daughter to your care was that child welfare would be coming out doing home visits, and that.
My understanding was that he was concerned with the baby's health, and you have gotten the reports that she's thriving, she's doing very well.
But you have an open court case with you're going to trial, which means did you have a chance to talk to Christina Beatty?
Not really, because she's on vacation.
Right. Because she emailed me back and said that she trying to figure out where my cell phone is. Linda said she would be available for the thing. I don't agree to be taped, so stop taping me, please.
Okay.
I'm not doing anything to violate your rights or anything like that. I'm being polite.
Okay.
Darn, where did I put my cell phone?
How competent is this social worker, this welfare child kidnapper for the government, spelled M-I-N-T, because they mint money from children? How come she can't even find her cell phone? Look how she's dressed.
Sit that right here?
Sure.
And she wants to walk into these people's house and find her baby. And then what she's really doing is exploring the house to say she was in there and saw dirty dishes and there was rats running up and down the walls. That's what she wants to do. She wants to fake a phony report.
Jose. Yeah.
Now the lady's already got the baby and brought it out and showed her the baby. Or she will here in just a minute. But she's gone back to her car to get her cell phone. Remember what she said? I don't like you taping me. Well, look, you're on the lady's property. You come to this mom and dad's house, and you're on their property. They have a right to tape you all they want. In fact, even if you're in your public office, Barbara Fisher, they would have a right to come and videotape you in your public office, because guess what? You're not running a private CPS, Barbara Fisher. You're running a public office. People, I urge you to call Barbara Fisher and ask her, don't you know that every baby, as soon as it's born, loses a few ounces in weight? That was not a justified reason to snatch their baby, and that's why the judge ordered the baby back, because the judge, who's not
I'll show you my baby. Can you hold this for me, please? Yeah.
totally incompetent, knows more than you do, Barbara Fisher. And your supervisor, Linda Case or whatever her name is, yeah, I noticed that too. If you study the Bible, there's the sign of the devil is 666. If you look at the phone number right after the area code, the Yola County area code 530, the next 3 numbers are 666.
Because Stephen and I had a conversation.
And her supervisor's number is also 666. So, I mean, if that's a sign of the Antichrist, is that telling you something? If you're a Christian, that means something.
I can't get through to Linda Case.
Islamic, it maybe doesn't mean anything.
Chris Beatty is out, as you know.
But as soon as I saw that number,
photographed, and I'm not being allowed to admit
666.
to the house, and I thought I had all this.
Red
arranged.
flags
I
went
thought
up
the
in my
attorneys were
brain.
doing all this. So I need Linda Case to call me on my cell phone because my number's blocked. I can't get through to hers. She was going to be available, so her cell is what it always is, 666-7007.
yeah, call her supervisor.
No. That's not her office line. That's
666-7007. Ask Linda Case, why the heck are you letting somebody go out representing a state organization or a county organization called Child Protective Services, for lack of a consistent name. I just call them all CPS. They keep changing their name as they get a bad reputation. They change their name to something else so that you won't associate them with the dirt they've done under the old bad name. So I stick with CPS. I don't care what they call themselves. Call Barbara Fisher. I called her, and for your information, before the show started, hours ago, many hours ago, I called Barbara Fisher and said, I would like to get your take on this and ask you some questions. Questions I wanted to ask you, Barbara, is being a woman, have you never given birth to a child? Don't you know, Barbara, that all babies lose weight immediately after birth? All babies do. That is a natural phenomenon. Why you didn't get that? That was not an excuse to steal this baby. You just wanted a healthy baby, Barbara. I think you've committed a criminal act, Barbara, and you should be indicted and arrested, if not by the sheriff of Yolo County, by the militia of Yolo County. That's just William Wagner's opinion. But I invite you, Barbara Fisher, to return my call and answer some of my questions, and I'll give you a chance. And don't give me this crap. Oh, this is a private case. And Mr. Wagner, you made it public. No, I did it with Gigi's permission, and she had every right to tape you in her house, in front of her house, on her yard. You had no right to be there without a warrant signed by the judge. If the judge is a clean judge, he would have given you a signed warrant with an affidavit attached saying, we have information that you've done bad things to your baby and we have to come in your house and see the torture rack that you torture your baby with, or whatever it is. Judge didn't give you such a warrant, did he, Barbara Fisher? Oh, I know. You say, well, this is the way we do business. Well, the way you do business is a criminal way. You are a criminal, Barbara. And the fact that you said, I'm going to call your attorney to Gigi's attorney, have him call you and tell you to back off and let me go on a search and destroy mission in your house. Lawyers are criminals too. This is not impressive to anybody that's got any brains. Remember the 13th Amendment I just told you about? The original 13th Amendment from 1818? Lawyers lose their citizenship. They can't be judges. They can't be prosecutors. They can't be public defenders. They can't hold a job as a dog catcher. They're not U.S. citizens. And yet they still rob people blind. Okay, enough of that. There's also a tape, another tape, but we're not going to go into Gigi's. This was for Gigi and her husband. They're not getting divorced. They're not having problems unless CPS creates problems for them. They just had a second baby. And now CPS says, oh, you've got a case. No, she doesn't have a case. She will have a case, Barbara Fisher, when Gigi sues you in federal court. That's when she will have a case. And I hope she does it in pro per or with a legal assistant and not a member of the bar-carded criminal union. Now, it's not that I'm trying to defend just women's right to keep their babies, because I talked about Amy Durand. If you'd watched my show 10, 12 years ago, you would have seen this documentary. I'm going to give you a piece of it. This is called Fathers Without Justice. It's a 90-minute documentary I did more than a decade ago, and this first case with John in Green Bay, Wisconsin, will blow your mind. Blow your mind.
I would not defend it anymore.
Based on the court fraud, the court-sanctioned perjury the court allows in Judge Kelly's, and this is pandemic, you've now decided you're going to vote Libertarian this year?
Absolutely.
Did you know that there are Libertarian candidates that are making this part of their platform?
Absolutely, yes.
But you don't see Democrats and the Republicans doing anything to change the inequity.
I have contacted my local representative and my congressman. Neither one of them are even aware of this problem. But when I speak to their aides, oh, yes, my brother is going through this. The same county that won't let me see my kids, allows my wife to take them away from me, has placed a foster child with me. Here she is. Hi, sweetie. And they pay me to take care of this child.
They pay you to take care of your foster child. But at the same time, They won't enforce your visitation orders to see your own daughters.
No, they won't.
And why do you think that is? Is there some cronyism going here? Tell me what's happening.
Okay, I believe it's because of the guardian ad litem that they appointed in this case.
Which is who?
His name is David Matthias.
And what's the connection to him?
He is an old friend of my ex's father. They used to be old drinking buddies.
I don't hype the Libertarian Party because they've been infiltrated and pretty much ruined in most states, though not all states. But here's John Lays. They take away his two daughters. He can't even visit his own daughters, but they give him somebody else's foster daughter to raise, and they pay him to raise somebody else's daughter while they destroy his relationship with his two daughters. This is insanity on steroids. Thank you very much, Child Protective Criminal Services. They all should be arrested. I'm William Wagner, thanking you for tuning in tonight. And don't forget, if you go to court, go to the clerk and ask for the master tape copy of your proceeding. Don't ask for the paper transcript. Demand. It's your constitutional right, and the U.S. Supreme Court will support you in that. Get this book, Death of the Justice System, and you'll see all the citations. So with that, I go back to the documentary I did more than a decade ago when it was only the fathers getting screwed in court. Now it's the screwing the mothers, parents that are doing fine, they just want to grab your child because they're worth ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. Alice Patino, you say you want to protect a child, you won't stand to see a child, then get into the case of the two children killed in Santa Barbara County in foster care that has been silenced and terminated. Talk about the 100 and some children that disappeared in foster care in Los Angeles and they can't find them. Don't tell me, oh, you won't stand to have a child. You're standing for it every time you let a CPS worker go out and kidnap a child without a trial under the 7th Amendment. You're part of the evil criminal cabal, Alice Patino, and all you other leaders that do this public service announcement on local corporate television saying, I won't stand to see a child harmed. Then get rid of CPS, put them in jail. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I'm William Wagner. That's my opinion, while we still allowed a First Amendment opinion. Back to fathers without rights. This comes down to who's drinking buddies, and you can be cut off from your own children.
Apparently.
When you've done nothing wrong, and the same county will try to make it up to you by giving you a foster child to take care of, but you can't see your own child?
That's true. That's what is happening.
What does your foster daughter think of the situation? She said earlier that she'd been abandoned by her mother after being given placement to her mother. Do you know that to be true?
Yes, that is true.
So she was cut off from her father. Her mother then abandoned your foster daughter. And the county places Liz, is it? Yes. Puts Liz in your care, pays you to take care of Liz as a foster child, while at the same time, because of the drinking buddy relationship, ignores your right to see your own children.
That is what has happened, yes.
Are you going to vote for more Democrats and Republicans to keep this, or what are you going to do about it?
I'm certainly not going to vote for any Democrats or Republicans.
Who do you think you're going to vote for this year? What side of the ticket you're going to look for?
I'll be voting the Libertarian Party.
When you were very little, what happened that you lost track of your dad?
My mom and my dad got a divorce, and I knew him when I was a little kid, like when I was like 2 or 3 or something. And then they got divorced, and he ended up leaving, and my mom ended up pushing him out of my life completely. I never remembered him or anything.
Okay, Liz, then your dad was pushed out of your life by your mom. Did your mom have some mental problems or bipolar or what?
For what I know, I believe this is correct, that my mom was diagnosed when I was younger as a paranoid schizophrenic. She eventually went off her meds and she started going into hearing voices and everything. And we ended up moving to Indiana and back. And I guess my dad tried actually sending me letters and stuff and trying to meet with me and everything. But the court system wouldn't allow him to know anything. They wouldn't allow him to let me know, like, let him know where I was.
So the court system worked against you, even letting your father find you?
Yes.
And you recently found your father, and what happened?
Well, after my mom went through her rages, and we ended up in a homeless shelter in Green Bay, which actually was the second one we went to because she got thrown out of the other one for her problems. And so we were at that one, and she got into an argument with me. And it was just a little argument. She started pushing me around, and then she gave me a 3-inch scratch on my neck. And so then they told her that she had to leave because she wasn't welcome. That day, though, since my sister has Down syndrome, Michelle Miller, she's over 18, and my mom planned on signing her off to a group home because she can't take care of her anymore. She was unable to. So that day, they ended up coming over, which we had a planned appointment. They came over. My mom signed the forms for her. They took her, and then the police kindly asked her to leave. And then they took me to shelter care, which is a juvenile facility. Then I went into when I found out my foster father, well, he wasn't my foster, he became a foster parents, Kathy Lays and John Lays. And since they knew me pretty well and stuff, and we had a close relationship.
So your foster parents helped you find your biological father. What now? It's been like a decade after you were cut off from him?
I believe I was cut off when I was 2 or 3 or around there.
So it's been more than a decade.
Yes, and I am now 15, and I met my father this last winter.
Okay. Do you like your biological father?
Yes, he's great. He's wonderful.
Do you wish the court hadn't cut him off from you?
Yes, I wish they wouldn't have. And well, yeah.
Does it make you angry at the court system that cuts you off from your own father?
Yes, it does.
Thank you for this interview. Well, there you had it, people. That was John Lays of Green Bay, Wisconsin, and he's a foster dad to somebody else's teenage daughter. But his ex-wife won't let him have visitations with his own daughters. And you saw right there, you saw the graphic pictures of when he was still seeing his daughters a little bit to 2 years later when his ex-wife wasn't cooperating. His daughters weren't so happy anymore. What that mom doesn't understand is when those girls grow up, they're going to realize what their mom did to wreck the relationship, and it's going to blow back on his ex-wife. She's going to have daughters, they're going to have problems because they cut the father out. And yet the court says won't enforce his rights to see his own daughters, but they'll give him a foster daughter to raise for somebody else. Is this kooky or what? Well, that's Wisconsin. You think, well, maybe that's only in Wisconsin it's kooky. Not so. It's all over. And we want to take it back now where the Wisconsin fathers are rallying on the steps of Madison, Wisconsin. And are they angry? Listen to the guy with the white beard. He had a heart attack and a whole bunch of medical problems, and they're never going to get $1 out of him now because they cut him off from his children when he had done nothing wrong. So let's go listen to these Wisconsin fathers, June 12th.
And the judge said immediately to go right to the Court of Appeals, and they said I wouldn't even need for hearing. And the judge, his name is Spicer, Judge Spicer. He's a friend of mine. At least I believe he's okay. And so immediately I went to the Court of Appeals. And they refused to even address the issues. They refused to address it. And I just found out that the judge finally found out about all this. Both parents equal, men and women, both of us. Line 3, they refused to address this because my address was the equal rights for men and women to grow up the children. And I have I've made the decision to do this for the rest of my life. I've had a heart attack. I've had at least 2 or 3 heart attacks. I've had surgeries. I've had doctors in the state, and I've had federal doctors too. Because I've had heart attacks because of this. I had to go to the federal court too.